Good day, and welcome to another World of Warcraft video. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Court of Stars on Mythic difficulty, well, Mythic Plus difficulty, and this is going to be Mythic Plus 8, but generally this is going to be a tanking and dungeon guide for the Court of Stars, which isn't as bad a dungeon as some might make it out to be. Currently this week we have Tyrannical, Raging, and Storming as our modifiers, but that's really about it. So the Court of Stars can be more or less as difficult as you kind of want to make it. Here you need to be careful of the sentries, so you need to destroy the sentries and stun them as much as possible. The sentries will activate the alarm here, and the alarm will trigger all the enemies in the surrounding area. Should you be able to get rid of them and switch off the alarm, you'll be able to handle things a lot easier. As long as you don't pull the alarm, you generally actually have a pretty decent time in this section. Honestly speaking, it's a super duper easy peasy situation. You can disable the beacon to be extra safe, but it's really not necessary. Beyond that, there's nothing too much in terms of priority when it comes to these mobs. In terms of the Guardian constructs that you'll be fighting, there is a tiny bit of priority on interrupting them where you can in terms of charging station and some of the other moves, but really it's nothing too crazy. Suppress, you can also interrupt, and beyond that you're fine. We have to watch out a little bit for the whirlwinds here, just because that's our modifier, and you want to not stand inside of this pink smoke. It will cause quite a significant chunk of damage to you. Again, we want to be careful about our pathing. As a tank, I like to pull this robot here, or Guardian Construct. It helps me avoid some of the roaming mobs, but also just allows me a clear path to the second section of the dungeon, which is fairly straightforward. So I like to go around here. It does allow me to avoid some of the fighting, and it does allow me to at least prevent some damage. As a tank, you can help by not placing the pink smoke or by your enemies, but also in general just try and avoid that. Here we're going to pull the sentry, and then we're going to stun him so that we can obviously get rid of him. Again, super duper important to get rid of the sentry. Once you've done that, things are generally a lot easier. Seems like we've accidentally pulled, but this is okay. You don't need to panic here. We just simply need to retain our composure, and we should be more than fine. Some AoE silences, if you have them, will be helpful here, as it allows you to not have to focus on any specific enemy, but there's quite a lot of enemies coming through here. So this is a bad situation, and this is exactly what shouldn't be happening in terms of a fight. You want to interrupt the fortification on the Dusk Guard, because that does help you out, prevents the enemy from having so much additional defense. This this did not go, but it's fine. It's good to see when things don't go exactly according to plan. Again, interrupt the fortification just to help prevent some of the damage and some of the additional mobs strength there. But yeah, this is just basically, it's okay to sometimes have these things happen. Don't panic too much, and just make sure that you keep control of everything. Interrupt what you can, and just basically don't be scared to activate your cooldowns, especially as a tank. It's fine to see these things happen sometimes. It's really not too much of a major issue, so don't panic too much. Once you've cleared out these mobs, this section is probably the most convoluted section in terms of difficulty with mobs, and you should have a fairly straightforward situation from this point onwards. There's another Duskwatch sentry here, and there's another one over here. You want to pull here and then stop him. You don't have to worry too much because there's no longer an alarm because we've deactivated it, so there's really not too much of an issue here. Once you've cleared out these packs, your percentage is fairly high, and that's because we pulled additional mobs. It shouldn't be this high. It doesn't have to be at 43%, so you don't need to pull these ones. You will need to pull this mob here, but again, just be aware of the construct. It's the biggest kind of concern or focal point here. You can also interrupt the Duskwatch Guard as well if you want to, but yeah, you shouldn't really have too much of an issue. And yeah, just basically avoid what you can. Unfortunately here the whirlwinds do make things a little bit more difficult, but it's not too much of an issue. where you can, try and move them away from the pink cloud so that you can assist your party, and just continue to interrupt what you can. Be aware that the boss is behind you. You don't want to accidentally pull him either. Okay, and that is basically it. What you can then do is you can decide a section that you want to kind of take on the boss fight. Me personally, I like to pull into this section over here. I find that it's generally the best section for me. Um, it's got the easiest mobs to clear, and it generally correlates quite well with my timings in terms of where my percentage is and where the boss is. Again, be aware of what modifiers you have, and you should be fine. But yeah, the Arcanist, you can also interrupt their cast Nightveil Orb, which can be quite irritating. And yeah, that's I think that's pretty much it. The boss himself is quite interesting in terms of how he behaves, so we will have to obviously talk through that. But this section is not the hardest. I think a lot of people, kind of like you saw there with us, tend to unfortunately mix up the mobs in the beginning. And this does immediately make it a lot harder. You do tend to get quite a few wipes when you kind of fiddle around with that middle section. So yeah, once you've done that, you can disable the alarm, and then you are pretty much good to go. What you can do here is you can actually sneak through here, and you can actually taint his potion. This is great uh, if you have the ingredients, but beyond that, you should be fine. So what we're going to do is we're just going to allow the boss to continue to walk around. We're going to let him come around to this section, and then we're going to pull him from there. We don't need any more mobs, and then we can take it from there. They're going to try to disable the alarm. A little bit unnecessary. You don't need to disable the alarms like they're doing. It's not a major concern. But if the players want to disable them, that's more than fine. It's not really that. It's never a negative to disable them. So here will come Patrol Captain Gerardo, or Gerardo. And from here, it's a pretty interesting fight. There's a couple focal points, so he doesn't do too much. As a tank, your big thing is the positioning of his Resonant Slash. So Resonant Slash creates kind of like two triangular effects, and then a line. Watching where you place these abilities is important. He will cast Arcane Lockdown. You need to jump so that you can avoid Arcane Lockdown, and then you should be fine. Party seems to be not struggling a little bit with this concept, but yeah, it's generally speaking not too difficult to fight. Avoiding these AoEs and positioning the boss so that he's not double layering his AoEs to make it difficult for your DPS is probably the biggest section. Him not having signal beacons means that he's generally okay, and you should be more than fine. So yeah, this will take us a while now because our DPS are dead. So we're gonna have to probably cut the fight here and move on, because I don't want to waste too much of your time. But the mechanics are very much the same. So simple stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys just now. Cool. Alright, so we've finished the boss. The last 20% he will grab for a potion. If you poison that potion as we have, you'll basically avoid that last 20%. Here on this boss, it's super important that you look on your minimap and isolate these yellow dots here. This will allow you to tackle the mob. So here you need to fight I think it's four or three, I think it's three enforcers, and you need to basically kill them. And when you kill them, you need to be able to essentially draw out the bosses and fight them one by one. Here in this section, something super important to be aware of is these blazing imps. They can do a lot of damage if you leave them be. So you want to, as soon as you take them on, you do want to minimize them as much as possible. Then you will come around here and you will fight these enforcers. By killing these enforcers, which are around the corner here, you'll be able to pretty much sit very nicely when it comes to pulling out the boss. Now there's a couple moves you can and cannot interrupt here. There's nothing too much in terms of the like mob intricacy here. You can interrupt one or two moves of the Watchful Inquisitor. You can stun them a little bit, but there's really nothing too crazy. The big thing here is percentage in this dungeon. Percentage is a huge factor that you need to be aware of at any given time. Unfortunately, our percentage is very, very high, and we're going to well exceed the 100% mark because of that first pack pull. But beyond that, there's nothing too much in Quarter Stars that's honestly that tricky. The first section can consume time just depending on what you're doing. The rest is basically all up to you and the party. Fell Detonation, is a AoE move, so just be aware of it. It's not able to be interrupted, so just stand away from it if you are very close by it. The further away you are, the less damage you will take. Yeah, that's pretty much it. They will then start sending the bosses in one by one. So you can see there, they send in the first boss or the first part of the boss, Imak Tua or Imatua or whatever her name is. She'll do Whirling Blades, very clearly marked. You can avoid it. And yeah, basically this portion of the fight is just kill the different adds sub bosses, I guess, that come from here. There's really nothing too much to this section. Um, the enforcers, finding the enforcers, and basically avoiding the obvious moves is really where you gain a lot of your time back. But beyond that, there's not too much. I'm going to start leading her away. You can do this as a tank if you want to. Start leading her away so that you can obviously start moving towards the other enforcer. They spawn randomly, by the way, so either you can sometimes get super duper lucky and have them spawn in the nice areas that you've clearly kind of demarked and finished, or you can get a bit unlucky and not have that occur. It is just something that happens. You can't stun to stop fell devastation, as you can see. It does just stay. You can't stun, you can't silence. So you just need to be aware of it. As a DPS or as a healer, try your best to avoid that move. The tank is not so much concerned by it, but it is something that you should possibly be aware of. They will then send another boss to come check us out. This is going to be Belgar the Watchful, or the Watchful. I thought it was going to be the Watcher. Again, just intercept them and kill them. Try and take them disintegration beam, interrupt that, and you're basically done. Honestly, that's really about it. He will cast Impending Doom, which isn't really something too crazy. It does just need to be kind of held off, and then Disintegration Beam, interrupt, and you're basically good to go. So really nothing too crazy, I want to say, when it comes to like the sub bosses. They like kind of one hit, one move wonders. So yeah, be aware of that. This mob across the bridge you will have to take at any given point in time. I think they're guaranteed to spawn 2 across the bridge. Again, be aware of your Guardian construct. He's the big boy that you need to watch out. As a tank, make sure that you stand away from him. Give him a stun, give him an interrupt, give him whatever you can. He's going to do charge smash. He'll place it on you. If you've placed it away from your team, you've basically done your job. And that's it. Guardian construct, your biggest concern, always is, always will be. And that's it for like this whole section. So we're going to try and just pull the enforcer, pull her away over here, away from the imps if possible, which will help us just to save some mob time basically. And then from there we'll probably go back around and never mind, we now have the imps. That's okay, again, not too much of an issue, don't panic. Stun the imps if possible. It does help out. They do the most damage. Interrupt whatever spells you can and just remain focused on your target and you'll be fine. Be aware of fell devastation from the fellbound enforcer. It is going to cause a lot of damage, and yeah, beyond that you should be fine. Pretty straightforward. So here what you can do is you can come up here. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull the boss away from the roaming pack that's near her. So what I like to do is obviously we'll destroy Conan the Barbarian over here, who does just basically do this move, which everyone should easily be able to avoid. And then from there, it's just about pulling the boss. Now, when it comes down to these older dungeons, there's really nothing too crazy for you to be concerned about. Uh, I think the older dungeons are actually fairly straightforward by modern standards, so you shouldn't really have any major issues. As a tank, your goal is predominantly just to avoid any cleave effects, things like shockwave, where he will stun you. He does do a little cone, but yeah, that's really about it. Be aware of this mob, don't pull them, and what you can do is you can move around, grab the boss, and pull her into this little cove here. If you do that, then you'll be fine, and you won't pull the mob that's behind you. So pretty nifty. Beyond that, interrupt Withering Soul, her move there, and avoid the floor AoE. That's really it. There's not too much to her as a boss. Again, fairly straightforward as a unit, so nothing too crazy. She does spawn a bunch of imps, so be aware of that. But yeah, honestly speaking, there's really nothing too crazy. Keep moving her as a tank. Keep creating space. Keep avoiding these fights. Interrupt Withering Soul. And yeah, you should be fine. Beyond that, nothing too crazy. Again, the imps, try and interrupt them, and you should be fine. And yeah, although it looks like we're not having a great time here, it's very much as straightforward. Again, interrupt Withering Soul, and again, you should be fine. So yeah, but my party is not doing very well, unfortunately, as you've probably noticed. So just be aware of that. Every time your party member steps into the flame, a imp will spawn. So that is just something you have to deal with. But yeah, I'm not going to recount this boss, so I'll check you at the next one. But yeah, just be aware of all that. Cool. Okay, so we are at the point basically where we don't have that many fights left. We have a sub boss, and we have this section here. This section here is basically a game of Cluedo, where you're going to speak to these chatty rumor mongers. So you can chat to them. As you can see, my party members here are mentioning exactly what the you know clues are. So, for example, they're wearing gloves, they're male, so you can start investigating here. Could be this guy, light vest, so it could be this guy here, I think, possibly. Uh, there we go. Exactly. Perfect. How's that one? Super quick. It can take a little bit of time for some people, I think. But yeah, eventually you'll kind of get used to all the clues and how they manifest. So, really, there's not too much to this part, barring the notion of, uh, you know, that he needs to basically be defeated. So, or identified, and that's basically it. Obviously, there's a little bit of time taken before he gets up here. You want to beat him as quickly as possible so that you can get your timer done, which you can't see mine, thankfully, but we're very close to not making this one, which isn't too much our fault. We just may be a little bit slow, but we can do it still. We just need to basically beat this boss as quickly as possible and then take things from there. The sub boss is not anything too crazy. Honestly speaking, there's really nothing too much to him. Keep him faced away from the party. He'll do a move called Vampire Claws, which you'll need a little bit of defense for. But beyond that, there's really nothing too crazy. So don't panic too much here, and just basically try and burst him down as quickly as possible. You can't really interrupt him too much. You can't really do too much. So yeah, face away from the party. Avoid any kind of overarching moves, and you should be fine. Kill the bat and then move on. Don't kill your party member, and then pass on through to fighting the boss. So this boss is also again fairly simple on paper. You don't want to get hit by blade surge, so you basically want to avoid his moves. That's all he really is. It's just avoiding moves. There's not too much anyone can do. His moves are clearly demarcated, so basically just spread out and yeah, don't die. To cut a long story short. So yeah, that is pretty much this dungeon. So we'll obviously take him on, and hopefully I'll make my key. I have a very short window to do this fight, but yeah, hopefully. There we go. Even more. Very good. Alright, let's do it. Let's do it, let's do it. Okay, so this one is just pure avoiding his moves. Basically, there's nothing too much to it. You'll see on the floor, avoid that. If you're the tank, avoid that. Watch where his clones are going and watch the markings on the floor to make sure that you don't get hit by it. And that's basically it. Everything is pretty straightforward. Spread out for blade surge. He's going to spawn more markers. Watch where they are and avoid what direction their blades are going in, and you should be more than fine. That's really about it. Again, nothing too crazy. Avoid all these little lines on the floor and you'll be fine. Basically, to cut a long story short, there's nothing too crazy to it. So yeah, for me personally, at least there's nothing too wild. But yeah, you do just want to avoid where he's at. Avoid having him get surrounded by his copies, and yeah, you should be fine. Hopefully, if your party does enough damage. Again, you'll see these light gray marks on the floor. It's super important to try and avoid these. But yeah, that is pretty much it. So straightforward stuff. Honestly speaking, we are not having a great time here. You want to pull him away from his clones always. As a tank, it's very important. It helps with just the spacing. And yeah, basically a super duper easy time, to be honest with you. Again, he's going to Blade Surge. Just keep pulling him away from his clones. Don't let them kind of all get stacked up on each other. You'll see this little pulsating effect that they have. Obviously, that's kind of something you want to avoid. So yeah, beyond that, there's nothing too much else that I would say is important. I did not make this key on time. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put this one down to my DPS. No, I'm kidding. As a good tank should, I'm going to put this down to my DPS. But yeah, this fight is very much more just avoiding these little kind of insignia, avoiding the markers, and just basically doing whatever you can to avoid any damage. As a tank, it's all about spacing him so that he keeps moving around the map instead of obviously moving way in. But yeah, that is this one done. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Bye.